Hello everyone, today it's my wrap-up day for September and I'm playing a little bit with the video and the setup, so I hope that's okay. I mean, it has gotten into this winter time when it's always dark and yeah, I'm trying other things. I hope you enjoy it, let me know. But this month I have read 17 books and 3,364 pages. The number of books is so high because it's short in September, so a lot of the books I read were very short, but still 3,364 pages is quite a lot, so I'm happy with that. And the first book I finished was War of the Beast and the Animals by Maria Stepanova, which is a poetry collection by Maria Stepanova. I had read In Memory of Memory before from her, and I didn't really like it. It was very meandering, but I tried to give her a second chance by her poetry, which is the main thing she does, and I still didn't like it. The tone is very not gelling with me. Some of the thoughts and things were interesting, but just the tone was not my thing, so I didn't enjoy that too much. And then the next book I read for shorter September was Orbital by Samantha Harvey, and this is again a very short book, and it's kind of about these astronauts that are in the space station, and you just follow their thoughts, and some of the thoughts are deeper than others, but it was a little bit not meandering, but a little bit shallow for me. I think I was supposed to be this very deep observation of life from space, and like seeing the Earth down, you would get something more from it, but that's not what I got. So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed by this, to be honest, because I was very excited. I read it because it was nominated for the Booker, and I had seen this before everywhere, and it looked interesting, and the book is beautiful, so I decided I'm gonna buy it and read it, and it was not as good as I was hoping for, so that was a little bit of a disappointment. Then the next book I finished was The Remains by Margo Glantz, and this was about this cello player that her husband recently died, and she was kind of reminiscent in that relationship and in like how music fits into her life and into life in general. It was okay. I liked some parts of it. I was a bit uninterested in other parts, but it was okay. I enjoyed it enough, I guess. The next book I read was probably the shortest of shorty September, and that was People from My Neighbourhood by Hiromi Kawakami, and this was like, it was not short stories, but it's basically just snippets of the lives of people from a neighborhood in Japan, and they are connected, so it's not short stories, but it doesn't have a narrative, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not, this kind of thing is not my kind of thing. I prefer like an immersive narrative, but for what it was, I really enjoyed it. I think it was very Japanese, if that makes sense. That's like magical realism, dark tone behind, with like a very stripped down prose that really works with that kind of style. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I'm happy I read it. Then the next book I read was Happiness as Such by Natalia Ginzburg, and this is about Michele, which is a boy that went from Italy to England because he wanted to kind of escape everything, and it's written in letters from his family to him and from him to his family, trying to, like, the family is trying to get him back because they think it's not good that he is so far away, so they're trying to get him back to Italy, and it's kind of like that dynamic. And it was messy families. It was I think it was well written, but like messy drama families for no reason is not something that I'm super into. So yeah, again, this one wasn't okay for me. And the interesting part of this one is that it's written in the 70s, and it's about that kind of time in Italy, so it had an historical component to it, and I like that. But yeah, other than that, it was just fine. The next book I read was A Flat Place by Noreen Masud, and this was nominated for the Women's Prize for Nonfiction, and I can completely see why. I really enjoyed this one. This one was probably my favorite of the month, and this is about, it's like a memoir from the author, and the idea is that she's from Pakistan, from a very flat place in Pakistan, and then she moves to England where she also finds flat places to enjoy herself in. And she has a thing for flat places. She feels safe in those places, and she kind of relates her life to that, and like the traumas that she had. She has a complex PTSD because of the way that she grew up, and not because it was in Pakistan, but because her dad was kind of abusive and controlling in a way that it was not okay, and she has PTSD from that, which she is struggling with, and that's what mainly the book is about. I think it's about the fact that you can get PTSD from things that are not big and recognize as something that you would get it from, like, you know, rape or like war, things like that. You can also get it from the small everyday things of her dad controlling her to a point in which she was not able to leave the house. Grow up like that, trying to always please him, and he will never be satisfied. Having to break from all of that, and all of those little things can also get you PTSD, and it's a lot more complex to unpack, and that's kind of what she goes through, and yeah, that's what the book is about. I didn't know. I thought it was going to be a memoir about this woman that likes flat places, which it is, but it's a lot more than that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was very well written as well, and yeah, it was very, very insightful. The next one I read was Like a Mirror by Hosok Fong, which is a Malaysian book of short stories. So these are short stories about Malaysia and what it means to be Malaysian and how to connect things to your culture. I like the stories about the Muslims in Malaysia and how they are how they are in the fringes of society and how society considers them and stuff like that. And there were some cultural things that I learned that were interesting. However, a lot of the stories were kind of forgettable for me, unfortunately. So I I think it was fine. It's, again, short stories are not the thing that I'm the most inclined to read, but I did enjoy some of them. The next book I read was The Pear by Nana Ekvtimishvili, and this is about this boarding school in Georgia, where the kids are not treated the best, and it's not always because of the people that run the school. It's in general also like the town sees them almost as delinquents, even though they are not. The most of the kids in the school, some of them are orphans, some of them are not. Some of them are like rejected by their parents and therefore orphans, but not orphans. Some of them are have difficulties learning in a normal environment, and so their parents decide to put them in this school. It does vary a lot, and we follow specifically this girl that lives there and tells us about the stories of the place. And it's heartbreaking. It was very heartbreaking what these kids have to go through. So yeah, I enjoyed that one quite a lot, and I think it's for how short it is, it says a lot of things, which is always a good thing. The next book I read was Zwart and vrouw, which means Black and Woman, by Tsitsi Dangarembga, and this is a collection of essays from the author about what it is to be a woman and be black, the intersectionality of that, but also how to be a writer in that position. She also drops a lot of names of people that I know and love, so that was always good, like Gugit Wadiongo and Adama Aido, people like that are like talk about the similar things about colonialism and stuff. I think Tsitsi Dangarembga is very, very smart, and I really enjoyed this. I read it in Dutch, obviously, because that's what my library had. I might have enjoyed even more if I was reading it in English, but I really enjoyed this essay. I think she's very smart, and I think they're worth a read, for sure. The next book I read was Owlish by Dorothy Tse, and this is about a professor that cheats on his wife and has an obsession with dolls, or develops an obsession with dolls. It's kind of magical realism, and this the writing was beautiful. The writing was very poetic, but not in a way that took away from the story, which is very difficult to do, and it gave a sense of a very whimsical atmosphere that I really like. So I really enjoyed the writing. However, the story was not as what I wanted it to be. As I said, it's about a professor that cheats on his wife. There's so many of those. I don't know why it's assumed that professors cheat on their wives all the time. I don't. I mean, yeah, could be, but yeah. I'm not interested in that. There was a political thing going on at the end. This book is from Singapore, I believe. And there is a political mystery sort of thing at the end. But it's too much at the end and too much at the back burner. If that was the main point of the story, I think I would liked it a little bit more or a lot more. But because of the story itself, I was just not that interested, even though the writing is beautiful. So maybe if she comes up with something that I'm more interested in theme-wise, I might pick her up again. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know. The next book is Summer of Reckoning by Marion Brunet, and this is about a family in France. The dad is from Spanish background because his parents left Spain because of the Civil War, which there are a lot of people in Spain that went to France when the Civil War started. And then the mom is from a very working class background, farmer kind of situation in France, and so they are not the most educated and the most nuanced people, and they have two daughters, and one of them, the older one, gets pregnant, and the dad wants to avenge her child by really beating up whoever got her pregnant, and it kind of builds sort of maybe a mystery of who that was, and there's also a lot of prejudices involved in this. There is a boy that is their neighbors, they've known all their lives, and the dad thinks that guy is the one, because he's Algerian, and he's like, oh, he doesn't have principles. And so this tension builds up, and people it gives a good job of how people build these stories in their mind to become a huge ball of an issue when they could have just been things that you deal with, and yeah, it's very dramatic in that sense. But yeah, I liked it. I think the building up of the tension was good. Maybe the topics that it deals with, like the racism and because there's racism, there's levels of racism basically, because the dad is Spanish and it's not racism but xenophobia, but he suffered from that. But then the boy that he thinks got his daughter pregnant is Algerian, and there's another layer of racism there, and it's a lot more complex than it fits in this small book. So I think that could have been developed a little bit better, just because of the space that the book gave to it. But other than that, I think it did a good job, and it was enjoyable to read. Next book I read is Leonard and Hungry Paul by Ronan Hession, and this is about two men, Leonard and Hungry Paul, which they both seem to be a little bit neurodivergent, and it deals with the fact that how they take care of themselves and how their lives develop and what they actually want in life. But it's very quiet, everyday life kind of situations. So Leonard lived with his mom, and he enjoyed living with his mom. He's the more like fitting of the two in society. And his mom died, and then he's trying to like build a life for himself when he's living alone. He gets a girlfriend, and he's trying to figure out how, like, if he's the friend of Hungry Paul just because they happen to be accidentally together in some things, or if he actually has value in his life. And then Hungry Paul lives with his family, and his sister is getting married, and she's struggling with the fact that she feels that she has to take care of the family because the parents are getting old, and Hungry Paul is not the most socially savvy of them all, and so she thinks that she would have to take care of all of them, but she doesn't want to do that, so she wants to move away and get married so that she doesn't have that burden. But none of the people involved need to be taking care of her, and so there is that dynamic there, and we see both dynamics from both men, and also their relationship, the dynamics of them together. I thought it was a little bit slow and quiet for me, and also there is a lot of humor in this book. If I read you the first sentence, it starts, Leonard was raised by his mother alone, with cheerfully concealed difficulty, his father having died tragically during childbirth. That's kind of, the tone, like, kind of snarky and fun. And at the beginning I was really enjoying that, but it did get old at some point. So yeah, I enjoyed this enough, but it was a little bit too slow and too snarky and too quirky for my liking, I think. The next book I read was People in the Room by Norah Lange, and I really enjoyed this one as well. This one reminded me of We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. It is about this girl that observes these three sisters that live across the street. They are all adults, and the three sisters seem to have a very weird dynamic, and so this girl gets obsessed with them, and at some point she visits them, and then she starts like visiting them regularly, and she talks about how dark they are and how she's kind of obsessed with them, but also kind of disgusted by them, the way they talk about things, all the secrets they have. She wants to know all the secrets, and it just builds this tension of something is going to happen at the end, or some reveal is going to happen at the end of why they are so secretive and why they are so closed off. And it was really good in that. So if you liked We Have Always Lived in the Castle, I think you will like this one too. The next one I read was The Suitcase by Sergei Dovlatov, and this actually a friend of mine gave me for my birthday, and I picked up immediately, which I never do, and it was very nice to do. And this one is so it's about this man in Russia that lives with his family, and his son is playing around, and he finds this suitcase in his house, and so all of the other chapters are chapters about the things that his son found in that suitcase and the story of them. And they are related to the history of Russia and the history of this man in Russia with his... some of them are more like everyday things, like he went with his brother-in-law somewhere. They were supposed to get something and instead they got drunk, and some of them are about like KGB officials and stuff like that. So it has quite a lot of broad range of things. Overall, I think it was just cute. It was nice. I enjoyed the writing and all of that, but it was mostly just cute how he interacted with things, and it was nice. I enjoyed it. Then the next one I finished was River by Esther Kinsky, and this is about rivers. I don't think it is a memoir, but I read a little bit like a memoir, and it was like thinking about cities from the perspective of rivers and what the rivers role in the life of the protagonist and the life of the city in particular gives, and in particular in London. And it reminded me a bit of Turning by Jessica Lee, the way that the narrative is built around this inanimate object or inanimate thing, which is the river, and how there is like there's a lot of musings and meanderings of thoughts in the book. It's basically about that. There's no narrative again, no great narrative or anything, and yeah, it's not again my favorite kind of story, but I could appreciate what it was doing. The writing was nice, so yeah, it was okay for me. Then I read Tulipomania by Mike Dash, and this is a non-fiction book. It's a history book about tulips in the Netherlands. So in the 1600s, Dutch people became really, really obsessed with tulips, to the point where a tulip bulb will be the price of a house. And so this, I knew that was a thing before, but this book goes more into the history of why that is happening, and also the dynamics of obsession by a society. Like, we still have those things, right? We still have things that are incredibly popular and expensive for no particular reason, and yeah, this book kind of goes into that, and also the bigger impacts in the society. So what happened to the merchants of the tulips when the bubble exploded, what happened with the florists, what happened with the normal people, that kind of thing. And I appreciated it for what it was. I don't think I gained any like crazy amazing insights or anything, but I enjoyed it. And then the last book I read was 13 Months of Sunrise by Raina Mamoun, and this is again thoughts interconnected but not really, about what is living in Sudan. So there were some everyday life occurrences that were in this book, some everyday thoughts about neighboring countries like Ethiopia and Eritrea. I liked the writing, I liked the stories, but again, short stories are not the thing that kind of tend to stay with me. So I liked it, I'm happy I read it, and that's that. But yeah, those are all the books that I read this month, quite a lot of them. Let me know if you have read any of them, if you enjoyed it, what you read for Shorter September, and if you enjoyed, please let me know. And until next video, bye!